I remember the cold feel of the concrete against my back. The door slammed shut. Click. That sound. That lock. That moment. It still echoes in my ears like a scream trapped inside a jar. "I told you not to touch her things," my grandfather shouted from the other side of the door. And then, silence. Just a small sliver of yellow light through the gap. And me. Alone. In a place I never knew existed beneath my grandmother's house. It smelled like mold, like time had rotted in there. The air was thick, heavy with something I couldn't name, but I could feel it. It clung to my skin. My fingers shook as I reached out in the dark, tracing the walls, looking for a window, a vent, anything. And then I heard it, his voice, whispering, "You look just like her." That's when I realized he hadn't been grieving. He'd been watching. And now, something inside him had snapped. "Hi. My name is Margaret Louise Bishop. I'm 83 years old. I used to be a schoolteacher in Kentucky before I retired. Blonde hair, well, white now, but back in my younger years, folks said I looked like Doris Day. I live alone now, and truth be told, I like it that way. I never imagined I'd spend the last years of my life digging through childhood memories I buried so deep. But when I opened that old chest last winter, a chest I hadn't seen in over 60 years, everything came back. Everything. Especially that summer after Grandma June passed. I was only 13. They told me she slipped in the bathtub. But even at that age, I knew better. There was too much blood. Let me take you back. It was 1955. Elvis was starting to play on the radio. Women still wore aprons like armor. And if a man raised his voice, you lowered yours. That was the rule. You didn't ask questions. Especially not in my family. My grandparents, June and Arthur Bishop, lived in a grand white farmhouse tucked just outside Lexington. It looked like something out of a storybook. Wide porch, swinging bench, rows of daffodils. But the inside, cold. Not in temperature, in feeling. You ever walk into a place that felt wrong? Like the walls themselves held secrets? That was Grandpa's house. But Grandma made it bearable. She smelled like lavender and pie crust. Her hair was always pinned perfectly, and her laugh, God, her laugh, could make winter feel like spring. She used to sing while making tea. I still remember the lyrics. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." She'd hum it when Grandpa got into one of his moods. And sometimes she'd hum it with tears in her eyes. The day she died, I was at the neighbors'. They said she fell. Hit her head. Died instantly. No funeral. No wake. Just a pine box and a grave. Grandpa said she didn't want a fuss. But I remember her saying once, "If I go before you, Arthur, promise me a garden full of lilies." He planted nothing. Not even grass. 2 days after she was buried, I was sent to live with him. My parents were heading to New York for some factory strike meeting. My daddy worked union, hard man, always smelled like tobacco and anger, and they said Grandpa needed the company. But I don't think Grandpa needed anything. Not after she was gone. He just wanted something, and that something turned out to be control. At first, it was small. He'd sit me down and tell me stories about how women in his time knew their place. How Grandma used to make his slippers warm by the fire. How she never said no. Then came the rules. Don't wear perfume in my house. Don't look in her wardrobe. Don't hum. Especially don't hum that lullaby. I didn't understand it then. I was a kid. But something about that song made his eye twitch like a broken wire. One morning, I found a photo album tucked behind some books. Grandma. In her garden. Smiling. I missed her so much I pressed the picture to my chest and cried. I didn't hear him come in. He yanked it from my hands. She was mine, he snapped, his voice like gravel and spit. You don't get to touch her. He stormed off. That night, he didn't talk during dinner, just stared at me. Not in the way a grandfather stares at a child. In the way a person studies something they don't understand. Or maybe something they fear. I started to notice little things changing. The door to Grandma's room was locked. But some nights, I'd hear music coming from inside. Her music box. The one shaped like a swan. I thought I was dreaming, until I saw the light. Soft, blue, flickering under the door. So one night, I tiptoed out of bed, my feet silent on the hardwood floor, and peeked. The door was ajar. And Grandpa, he was in there, wearing her robe, brushing her hairbrush through the air, whispering her name. That was the first night I hid under my bed. The next day, he acted normal. Asked if I wanted eggs. Smiled like everything was fine. But I knew it wasn't. So I made a mistake. I went into her sewing room when he left for town. It still smelled like her. Vanilla and fabric. Her notebook was there, full of poems. The last page read, "If I die before he does, it won't be an accident. Tell someone. Tell anyone." I dropped the book. That's when I heard it. The front door creak. He was back. And I was caught. He didn't say a word. He just walked up slowly, calm, picked up the notebook. Read the line. Then he smiled. Like the devil. "You want to act like your grandma?" he asked softly. "Then you'll live like her." And then he dragged me to the basement. A door I'd never seen before. Behind the pantry. He opened it. It smelled like wet leaves and iron. He pushed me in, locked it, and whispered through the crack, "You look just like her." And that's how it began. That was the first night. The first time I realized. Grandpa didn't lose his wife. He became something else when she died. Something darker. Something monstrous. And I was trapped in his house, with nowhere to go, and no one coming to save me. The darkness didn't scare me at first. It was the silence. Thick, suffocating, total. Even the spiders seemed to tiptoe in that basement. I sat with my back pressed against the wall, knees to my chest, holding back tears so I wouldn't make a sound. I didn't want to give him that. I didn't want him to hear me cry. But I was 13, and I was terrified. My stomach growled after the first few hours, but there was nothing down there except dust, webs, and a single light bulb with no string to turn it on. And the whispers. Every now and then, I swear I heard them. Soft. Like wind. But voices. Faint. One time I heard, "Help me." Another time, "Run." But it was the third whisper that shattered me. "Margaret, don't become me." It was her voice. Grandma's. I must have fallen asleep at some point. When I woke up, the door was open. No noise. No footsteps. Just unlocked. A plate of food sat at the top of the steps. Dry toast and cold chicken broth. No note. I waited for hours, too scared to go up. What if it was a trick? What if he was waiting? Eventually, my hunger won. I crawled up like a scared animal and grabbed the plate. The hallway was empty. Still, I didn't go far. I just sat there at the top of the stairs, wolfing down that pathetic meal, ears peeled for any creak, any breath. But he never came. That day, and the next, I stayed silent. He didn't speak to me. We ate separately. No more smiling. No more questions. Just the quiet terror of a man unraveling. On the third day, I made another mistake. I tried to run. He'd gone to town. I heard the truck rumble off the gravel path. I grabbed my coat, shoved my feet into dirty boots, and bolted. Problem was, I didn't know which way was out. The farmland around the house stretched forever. Wheat, corn, fences. No neighbors in sight. No paved road for miles. I ran until my lungs burned, hoping I'd hit the highway or a mailbox or anything. But the deeper I went, the more lost I became. And then I heard the truck. Coming back. He saw me. Didn't even shout. Just parked. Opened the door. And stood there. Smiling. I figured you'd try, he said calmly, as if we were discussing the weather. You're just like her. Always looking for a way out. He didn't hit me. Didn't drag me. That would have been easier. He just turned. Walked back. And left the door wide open. Like a dare. So I followed him. Because what else could I do? That night, I didn't sleep. The fear sat on my chest like a brick. So I waited. Waited until the creaks of the floorboards told me he was asleep. And then I crept out. This time, not to run, but to look. I needed answers. I needed proof. If I could just find something, anything, to show someone later, maybe they'd believe me. So I snuck into Grandma's room. The one he always kept locked. But that night, it wasn't. The scent hit me first. Lavender. Dust. And something wrong. Metallic. Like rust. But sharper. The room was clean. Too clean. Like it had been frozen in time. Her bed was made. Her slippers were beside it. Her hairbrush was on the vanity, with golden strands still clinging to the bristles. But the photos were gone. All except one. A framed picture of me. Me and Grandma. From 2 summers ago. But my face had been scratched out. Dozens of tiny angry claw marks where my smile used to be. I nearly dropped it. Then I saw it. The chest. Not the one I remembered. A different one. Longer. Heavier. At the foot of the bed. Locked with 2 latches. It looked like a coffin. And carved on the side, in shaky letters, was her name. June Marie Bishop. I felt my hands tremble as I touched it. It was cold. Too cold. And then I heard it. 3 knocks. From inside. I flew back so fast I hit the vanity. The mirror cracked. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I stared at that chest like it was breathing. And then, silence. The footsteps came seconds later. Heavy. Measured. Coming down the hallway. I grabbed the only thing I could, a pair of sewing scissors, and ducked under the bed. He walked in. Didn't turn on the light. Didn't speak. Just stood there. Breathing. Watching. I could see his muddy boots from under the bed skirt. They didn't move. For a full minute. Then, finally, he turned. And shut the door behind him. I stayed under that bed until dawn. Afraid that if I moved, that thing in the chest would knock again. Or worse, open it. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. Poured me tea. Asked if I liked biscuits. I nodded. My throat was raw from not screaming. He sipped his drink and said casually, June was a lot like you know. Always poking her nose where it didn't belong. Then he smiled. His teeth were yellow. And his eyes? Empty. Like something hollow lived behind them. I started planning my escape. Not just running. Escaping. There's a difference. Running is hope. Escaping is survival. So I searched every inch of that house. During the day, when he was out back tending to the tractor. At night, when I heard him snore like a dying engine. I mapped it in my head. Every squeaky floorboard. every rusted hinge. I found a small vent in the laundry room. It led under the porch. If I could pry it open, I might be able to squeeze through. But I needed a tool. Something strong. Something he wouldn't notice. That's when I remembered the shed. He never let me near it. But if I could just… Wait, let me tell you something about fear. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It tells you, don't go. Stay safe. Be still. But I didn't listen. Because the moment I saw that photo, the one with my face destroyed, I knew. He didn't see me as his granddaughter anymore. He saw her. And he wanted her back. That night, I crept toward the shed with a flashlight hidden in my coat. The lock was old. Rusted. I used the scissors. Popped it open. Inside were tools. Hammers. Shovels. Ropes. And jars. Jars with things in them. Hair. Nails. A wedding ring floating in cloudy liquid. Grandma's ring. The one she wore every day. He said he buried her with it. He lied. Before I could even scream, I heard the door slam behind me. He was there. Smiling. Holding the key. You really are just like her, he whispered. And then he turned off the light. I didn't answer him. I stood frozen by the staircase, staring at the rotary phone like it was the last rope dangling from a cliff, and I was barely holding on. He moved slowly, ladle in hand, soup still steaming. I said, "Are you hungry, June?" He called me June again. Not Margaret. Not Maggie. Not even girl. He'd erased me from his mind completely. I nodded. I don't know why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was survival. Or maybe, for just a second, I thought if I played along, I could live long enough to get out. He poured the soup into a cracked floral bowl and placed it on the table. Come sit. I walked slowly, deliberately, the scissors still hidden up my sleeve, the journal still tucked into my boot. I sat across from him. He stared at me the entire time I ate. He didn't touch his own food, just kept rocking gently in his chair, watching. His eyes glazed over, his lips moving softly, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I finished fast. My hands shook so badly I could barely lift the spoon. Thank you, I whispered. His smile stretched too wide. Good girls always say thank you. He went to the porch to smoke his pipe after dinner. That was his habit. Grandma had written about it in the journal. He's weakest when he smokes. His guard drops. She was right. I crept back into the kitchen, heart hammering, and picked up the phone. I dialed 0 for the operator, praying someone would answer. The line crackled. Then, a voice. Operator. How may I direct your call? I covered the mouthpiece with one hand and whispered, Help me. I need help. I'm trapped in my grandfather's house. He's not right. I think he's going to kill me. There was a pause. And then, connecting you to the sheriff. Click. Ringing. More ringing. Then, this is Sheriff Darrell Bishop. My blood turned cold. Bishop. The same last name. Sheriff, please, I stammered. My name is Margaret Bishop. I'm 13. My grandfather's gone mad. He locked me in a basement, dressed me like my dead grandma. He's dangerous. Another pause. Then a long sigh. Margaret, the sheriff said slowly. Why don't you put Arthur on the line? I slammed the phone down so hard it cracked the receiver. I didn't wait. I ran. Out the back door, through the porch, past the woodshed, toward the far fence line where the cornfields dipped. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. But I didn't get far. Because I ran straight into him. He grabbed my arm so tight I screamed. "Who were you talking to?" he barked. His breath smelled like pipe smoke and rage. "No one, no one," I cried. "I was just trying to call Mom." He yanked me by the wrist, dragging me toward the house. "No more lies, June." He wasn't even pretending anymore. He'd fully replaced me. In his mind, I was her. He didn't take me to the basement. He didn't even yell. He walked me, calmly, to the attic. A place I'd never been allowed before. The door groaned open like a haunted mouth. Dust clouds floated in the air, lit by streaks of moonlight through a broken window. There was one thing up there. A chair. And a mirror. The kind you see in old-timey dress shops. Tall. Standing. Slightly cracked. He forced me to sit. Then he stood behind me, both hands on my shoulders. "Look at her," he whispered. "Ain't she something?" I looked. I didn't see me. I saw her. Because he'd left Grandma's pearls draped around my neck. I don't know when he did it. Maybe while I slept. Maybe while I was passed out in the shed. But they were there now. Cold. Heavy. Like chains. I broke. "I'm not her," I screamed, lunging from the chair and shoving him backwards. He stumbled. Just enough. I ran again. This time, straight out the front door, barefoot. But headlights were pulling up the gravel road. For a second I hoped, it was someone from town. A neighbor. A stranger. Someone to help. But when the door opened, it was Sheriff Bishop. "Margaret," he said calmly, stepping out. "Your granddaddy tells me you're not feeling well." I backed away. "He's lying. He locked me up. He put me in her clothes. Look." I yanked at the pearls, snapped them from my neck, held them out like evidence. The sheriff looked at them. Then at me. Then he said, "You're confused, girl. It happens." And just like that, I knew. They were in it together. Brothers. Protecting each other. Keeping secrets. He stepped closer. "You're gonna come with me now. We'll have Doc Ellery look you over, make sure you're not hysterical." I ran. Not far. Just into the trees. But it was enough to lose them. I hid behind a stump, breath ragged, legs shaking. They called my name. Both of them. Not my name. Not Margaret. But June. Over and over. Like they were summoning a ghost. I stayed in those woods all night. Crying. Cold. Alone. I didn't sleep. Didn't dare. And when the sun came up, I snuck back to the porch, grabbed the journal, and stuffed it in a pillowcase with some bread and a can of beans. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to end this. I didn't feel brave. I felt like a cornered animal with one choice left: bite back or die quietly. That morning, as the sun rose and the dew glistened on the corn leaves, I walked barefoot across the gravel drive and unlocked the door to Grandma's bedroom. I knew he was gone. He always drove into town at dawn on Sundays for the paper and a bottle of cheap rye. I had maybe an hour. Maybe less. But I had a plan now. Not a perfect one. But something. And that something started with her wardrobe. He always told me to stay out of it. He'd nailed it shut once, after catching me near it. But the nails were old. I pried them loose with the scissors. The door creaked open like it had been waiting for me. And what I saw inside made my blood stop. There were only two things hanging. One was her nightgown, the same one he'd made me wear. The other was a wedding dress. Stained. Brownish-red smudges all down the hem. It wasn't dust. It wasn't rust. It was blood. Tucked in the pocket of the dress was an envelope. Yellowed with time. Taped closed. I peeled it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter, folded twice, written in Grandma's slanted handwriting. It said, "To whoever finds this. He's been planning this since last winter. I know it. He doesn't just miss me. He wants me back. But not as myself. He wants to make me again. I think he's watching Margaret. She's so young. So bright. He calls her June, sometimes when he doesn't know I'm listening. If I disappear suddenly, it won't be an accident. He's already tried once. He blamed it on the wine. I woke up in the basement. Naked. Cold. Next time. I don't think I'll wake up. Please. If I'm gone, burn the house down. Don't let it happen again. Don't let him make me out of someone else. Don't let Margaret become me. June. I couldn't breathe. I reread the letter 3 times. Each time, my chest got tighter. Tears stung my eyes. But there was no time to cry. I stuffed the letter into the journal and backed away from the wardrobe. That's when I heard the truck. It crunched up the gravel slow and steady. I peeked through the curtain. It wasn't just Grandpa this time. It was the sheriff, too. And a third man I'd never seen before. Thin. Wiry. With gloves on. My hands went numb. This wasn't just a check-in. They were coming to end it. To finish what they started. To erase me. I ran to the kitchen, ripped open drawers, looking for anything. Matches. Lighter fluid, anything. There. Grandpa's old camping kit. A box of waterproof matches. I grabbed them and the old oil lantern from the porch. Then I ran back upstairs and locked the bedroom door. I dumped the oil around the floorboards, careful not to spill on the journal or letter. My heart pounded like a war drum. The front door slammed open. Footsteps. Heavy. Angry. And then, June, where are you? Not Margaret. June. I struck a match. The flame danced. Small. Brave. Just like me. I touched it to the hem of the blood-stained dress. It caught on fast. I dropped the match and backed up, the journal clutched to my chest. Smoke curled up. The fire spread across the fabric, climbing the wardrobe, licking the curtains. I kicked open the window, tied the bed sheets together, and lowered myself down the side of the house. I could barely breathe. Ash floated past my face like angry snow. And then I ran. But not away. Not this time. I circled around the barn, crept up to the side porch, and peeked through the broken screen. Grandpa was storming up the stairs, coughing, yelling my name. The sheriff was shouting too, but the other man, the wiry one, just stood there, watching the flames with a crooked smile. Like he liked it. Like he wanted it. I snapped a photo on Grandpa's old Polaroid. It was blurry, but it showed them. All 3 of them. And fire. Then I ran. Through the trees. Across the fence line. Back to the gravel road. And I kept running. Until I saw headlights. It was a delivery truck. Heading out of town. I ran into the road, waving my arms, screaming. The driver slammed the brakes, jumped out. Jesus, girl, are you okay? I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. No, I cried. But I'm alive. The delivery driver's name was Carl. Mid-30s, strong arms, stubble beard. He smelled like leather and coffee. He didn't ask too many questions, just saw the blood on my hands, the soot on my clothes, and the pure panic in my eyes. He helped me into the truck gently, like I was made of paper. As we drove, I told him everything. Well, almost everything. I told him about the basement, the dressing up, the fire. But I didn't tell him about the letter, or the whispers, or the way Grandpa's voice still echoed in my head. You look just like her. Carl didn't say much, just nodded a lot. At some point, he looked over at me and said, "You're brave, kid. Brave and smart. Not everyone your age would have made it out of that place." I didn't feel brave. I felt hollow. Like I'd left parts of me in that house, burned into the wood, buried in the basement, stitched into Grandma's nightgown. He took me to the sheriff's station 2 towns over. A different county. Safe distance. At least, I thought so. The deputy on duty, Officer Maria Caldwell, was the first woman I'd seen in a uniform since this all began. She had kind eyes, olive skin, hair tucked in a tight bun. She knelt beside me, offered a blanket, and said, "You're safe now, sweetheart. Tell me everything." And this time I did. I showed her the journal, the letter, the photo of the burning house with Grandpa and the sheriff and that wiry man. She read every word. 3 times. When she looked up, her face was pale. "You did good, Margaret," she whispered. Then she stood up and said to Carl, "Don't let anyone in this building except state police. I'm calling in reinforcements." I heard her arguing on the phone later. Something about internal corruption, about covering tracks, about keeping the girl off record for now. They didn't send me back to my parents. Not yet. Instead, they enrolled me, under a new last name, in a public school 3 counties away. I was the foster niece of an old retired nurse named Betty McDougal. Kind woman. Lived in a tiny pink house with more cats than furniture. She never asked questions. Never pried. She just let me be a kid. For a while. School was strange. Loud, bright, full of lockers that slammed too hard and kids who asked questions I didn't want to answer. "Where'd you come from? Why do you flinch when someone calls your name? Why don't you ever go near mirrors?" I kept my head down, focused on surviving, one day at a time, until one Thursday afternoon. We were in history class. Mr. Henley was going on about the Civil War, and I was staring out the window. Then I saw it. A black truck, parked just beyond the school fence. The windows were tinted, but the shape behind the wheel, it looked familiar, too familiar. My pulse went wild. I asked to go to the nurse, ran straight to the office, begged to call Officer Caldwell. That evening, she arrived in plain clothes, took me to a diner, just the 2 of us. We sat in a corner booth under a flickering light, and I told her everything. About the truck, the shape of the man, the way I knew he was watching. She didn't doubt me. Instead, she handed me a new journal. Empty, clean pages. "Write it all down," she said. "Every detail you remember. Names, smells, sounds. Anything you forgot to tell me." So I did. That night, back at Betty's, I sat at the window with a flashlight and scribbled into the pages like my life depended on it. Because it did. A week passed. Then 2. I started to breathe again. Started to believe the worst was behind me. Until the school counselor pulled me aside. Said a relative had shown up. Claimed to be my guardian. I froze. What did he look like? I asked. The counselor frowned. Didn't say much. Older man. Wore a church suit. Carried a Bible. Said he was here to bring you home. I ran. Straight to the principal's office. Called Caldwell again. But she didn't pick up. That was the first time she didn't answer. And the first time I realized. They were coming again. And this time, they weren't going to let me live. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, flashlight in one hand, journal in the other. And I made a decision. I wouldn't just hide. Wouldn't just run. I'd finish what Grandma started. And I'd start by finding out who that third man was, the wiry one with gloves and dead eyes. Because something told me he was never there by accident. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. Pancakes with Betty. Walked to school. Smiled at the counselor like I didn't know anything. But inside, my mind was spinning. Who was he? The man in the gloves. The one who didn't speak. The one who just watched the fire like it was a memory he missed. I couldn't shake his face. Narrow eyes. Thin lips. Pale skin like he never stepped into sunlight. He was too calm. Too quiet. And it meant he was dangerous. That afternoon, I went back to the Bible. The one Grandma used to keep in her sewing drawer. Betty had it. Somehow, Officer Caldwell had rescued it from the fire, along with the journal and the letter. I'd flipped through it before, mostly looking for comfort. But this time, I flipped through the pages with intention. I checked every margin, every underlined verse, every folded corner. And then I found it, near the back cover, tucked between the final pages of Revelations. A photo. Small, black and white. 3 men. Younger. Smiling. Wearing military uniforms. I recognized Grandpa immediately, and standing next to him, Sheriff Bishop. But the third. The wiry man. Same eyes. Same crooked smile. And below the photo, written in Grandma's script. Arthur, Darrell, and Vincent, 1950, post-Korea. Vincent. I finally had a name. I stared at it for hours that night, tracing the lines of his face with my thumb. Why had she kept this photo hidden? What had they done? Were they all in on it? Was Grandma the first, or just the last? The journal said Grandpa changed after the war. Came home different. Cold. Mean. Possessive. But what if it wasn't just war? What if it was something else? A few nights later, I made another discovery. Betty had taken me to visit Grandma's grave. The new one. Not the one Grandpa buried her in, the fake one with no headstone and no grass. This one was real. Simple. A stone etched with June Marie Bishop. Beloved. I brought flowers, laid them down gently, and as I knelt beside the grave, something caught my eye. A corner of leather, sticking out from the edge of the soil. I dug with my fingers, pulled up a pouch. Inside, a folded piece of canvas. A map, drawn in pencil, yellowed with age. It showed the Bishop property, the house, the cornfields, the barn. But there was something else. A marked X, beyond the fence line, in the woods, labeled only, the route. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just stared at the map, tracing the lines over and over. What was the route? What had Grandma buried in those woods? And more importantly, why? The next day, I skipped school. Told Betty I had cramps. She gave me tea and tucked me into the couch. As soon as she left to volunteer at the local shelter, I grabbed a flashlight, the map, and the Polaroid camera Carl had given me. And I ran. The woods were quieter than I remembered. No birds. No breeze. Just the sound of my footsteps over twigs and old leaves. I followed the map for nearly an hour. Until I found it. A large, gnarled oak tree split at the base. Its roots stretched like claws over a patch of mossy dirt. And just beneath the largest root, a wooden board. Weathered. Buried deep. I dug it out with my hands. Lifted it. And gasped. A box. Like a time capsule. Inside, a photo album. A sealed letter addressed to whomever he hurts next. A key. And a cassette tape labeled, Play ME. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because suddenly, behind me, I heard twigs snap. I turned slowly, but no one was there. Still, I didn't wait to find out. I stuffed the contents into my backpack and ran, faster than I'd ever run, back to Betty's, locked the door, pulled the shades, and played the tape. Grandma's voice crackled through the tiny recorder. Shaky, breathless. If you found this, he's hurt you too. He's hurt all of us. Me. Others before me. Vincent helped him. I think they made a pact after the war. They called it restoring the spirit. Said women were vessels. Replaceable. Recreatable. She sniffled. Then, they've done this before. Other towns. Other girls. The sheriff protects them. I don't know how many. I only know they keep records. In Vincent's barn. A trunk with names. Photos. If I disappear, find it. Burn it. Expose them. And Margaret, if it's you who finds this, run. Don't let him finish what he started with me. The tape clicked off. I dropped it. Stared at the floor. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just about Grandma anymore. This was a pattern. A system. A sickness passed between men who thought they could shape women into shadows. And I was next. Unless I stopped them first. The wind howled that night. Branches scraped against Betty's windows like bony fingers trying to get in. I barely slept. The tape kept replaying in my head, over and over. They called it restoring the spirit. Said women were vessels. Replaceable. Recreatable. That wasn't grief. That wasn't love. That was obsession dressed in Sunday clothes. And they had done it before. To others. Grandma was just the only one who tried to fight back. The next morning, I asked Betty if she knew anyone named Vincent. She froze while pouring her tea. Didn't look at me. Just said, "There's a Vincent temple. Lived about 20 minutes north. Hasn't been seen in years. Folks say he keeps to himself. Temple, not bishop." But Grandma's note said Vincent, Daryl, and Arthur. Same time. Same place. He was the third. The quiet one. The keeper of records. I told Betty I needed to go to the library. Instead, I followed the back roads on Carl's old bicycle, legs burning as I pedaled against the morning wind. The further out I rode, the quieter everything became. No cars. No houses. Just the occasional faded sign and rusted fence. Then there it was. A rotting red barn, tucked behind a collapsed farmhouse and a dying cornfield. The door was half-hanging from its hinges. Vines strangled the wood. It looked abandoned. But I knew better. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air smelled like damp earth and rotting hay. Dust hung in beams of light cutting through the cracked roof. And at first glance, it looked empty. Just piles of crates. Rusted tools. A collapsed wooden ladder. But then I saw it. At the far back corner. A wall. Covered in newspaper clippings, Polaroid photos, and names. Girls' names. Some written in red ink. Some crossed out. Some marked with stars. I stepped closer, heart pounding. There were at least 30. Some as young as 10. Some as old as Grandma had been. Each name had a date. And next to most of them, a photo. Faded. Candid. Taken without the girls knowing. I covered my mouth with my hand. Tears filled my eyes. This wasn't just a sickness. It was a ritual. I scanned the wall for her. And there she was. June Marie Bishop. Age. 42. Marked with a red star. Below her. Status. Unstable. Reconditioning failed. Replacement identified. I felt my knees weaken, and under replacement identified was my name, Margaret L. Bishop. Age, 13. Initiation planned. I dropped the journal. My whole body went cold. They'd written me in before Grandma even died. I turned to run, but something stopped me. A crate, marked confidential. I kicked it open. Inside, a box of tapes, more photos, an old black book with leather binding and a metal clasp. I took the book, taped it to my chest with a roll of duct tape I found nearby. Then I ran. Didn't even look back. I rode the bike so fast I nearly tipped twice. By the time I made it back to Betty's, my hands were raw from gripping the bars. She was outside in her garden, knelt beside a bed of marigolds. I slammed the brakes, leapt off the bike, and said, "We need to call someone higher. Not local. State police. FBI. Anyone." She looked up at me slowly, and then she said something I'll never forget. "They've already been here." I froze. "What?" She stood up, wiped her hands on her apron. "They said you were confused, that you'd been through trauma, that you were lashing out. Said if I didn't return you, I'd be charged with harboring a runaway." My throat closed. "And you believed them?" She shook her head. "No, sweetie. But I'm 83 years old and not good with guns." Then she stepped aside and revealed what was behind her. A shovel, a pack, and a jar full of gas. "I dug a hiding spot in the root cellar," she said. "Just in case. You're not the first girl I've helped. Won't be the last." My legs went weak. I wanted to hug her, but I didn't. There was no time, because just then, a car pulled up. Black. Silent. License plate covered in mud. Betty pushed the cellar door open. "Go," she said. "I'll buy you time." The cellar was damp and tight, smelled like soil and mold. But it was the safest place I'd been in months. Betty lowered the wooden hatch and covered it with crates of preserves and pickled beets. From down there, I could barely hear what she said to the men outside. But I did hear their voices. One of them was Vincent. That same eerie tone, that strange calmness, like he was reciting a grocery list, except the groceries were girls. He asked if she'd seen me, said I was unstable, that I needed help, that they were taking me home. But Betty, God bless her soul, lied through her dentures. "No little girl here," she said, calm as ever. "Only me and my cats." Vincent didn't argue, didn't push. He left a card. And a warning. "If you do see her, she's dangerous. Call us immediately." Then they left. I didn't come up for 3 hours. When I finally did, Betty had already packed me a bag. Canned food, cash, the black leather book from Vincent's barn, the tape, the photos, the map, everything. She drove me halfway to Lexington in her old Chevy pickup. Didn't say much, just held my hand on the gear shift as we drove. "I knew a monster once," she said quietly. "He wore a badge too. But they all slip, honey. They all leave cracks. You just showed the world one." Then she handed me a number on a piece of paper. "Special Agent Leonard Griggs, FBI, Crimes Against Women Division. He helped me 30 years ago," she said. "He'll believe you." That call changed everything. Griggs listened, didn't interrupt, didn't say I was confused or dramatic or just a kid. He flew out 2 days later, brought a whole team, took me to a hotel where they had guards outside the door. I gave them the journal, the letter, the wall photos, the tapes, everything. Even the burned dress from Grandma's room. The Polaroids. The cassette with Grandma's trembling voice. It all became evidence, and I became a witness. They dug up the old Bishop property. Found bones in the basement floor. Not just one set. Multiple. All female. Some decades old. They searched Vincent's barn too. Turned out the black book was a ledger. Names. Dates. Locations. Girls from 3 different counties. Missing. Presumed runaways. But they weren't. They'd been catalogued like collectibles. Tested. Erased. The FBI raided Sheriff Bishop's house. Found hidden files, coded ledgers, photos he'd kept in a locked freezer. He tried to run. Didn't get far. Grandpa Arthur was arrested at a retirement lodge he'd checked himself into after the fire. They found him in a rocking chair, holding a burned picture of Grandma. He didn't resist. Didn't speak. Just looked up at the agent and said, "She came back to finish the job." Vincent was the last to fall. They tracked him to a motel outside Nashville. When they kicked in the door, he was sitting in the tub fully dressed, whispering, "They always come back wrong." I testified in federal court the following spring. It was the biggest case of my life, and I was only 13. I stood behind a partition, staring through one-way glass at the 3 of them. Arthur, Daryl, Vincent. They looked small, old, rotting from the inside out. I told my story. Every horrible, twisted detail. Grandma's voice on the tape played for the jury. They wept. Even the judge cried. Each of them got life without parole. No chance of appeal. Their names made national headlines. People from our town stopped whispering, started shouting. Because the thing about monsters is, once you turn on the lights, they can't hide anymore. I went back to Betty's after the trial. She made me pancakes. Same way as always. "I told you," she said, smiling. "You're more than her." And I was. I grew up. Went to college. Became a teacher like Grandma had dreamed. Wrote a memoir called June's Shadow. Donated all the proceeds to shelters for women and girls escaping abuse. And I never changed my name, because Margaret Bishop was the one who brought them down. Now, I'm 83. Hair white as snow. Bones crack in the morning. But I still remember it all like it was yesterday. The dress. The knock. The whisper. "You look just like her." And I smile. Because I didn't become her. I became me. And I made sure they'd never do it again. Backhand index pointing right if this story shook you. If it made you angry, heartbroken, or hopeful, don't scroll past. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments. What would you have done in Margaret's place? Round pushpin, and where in the world are you watching from? Let's see how far her voice travels. Bell subscribe for more true stories of survival, justice, and courage. Thumbs up like the video if Margaret inspired you. Loudspeaker share it with someone who needs to hear. Monsters can wear smiles, but light always finds them.